morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. Let's greet one another now by, if you can, unmute yourself just for a few seconds to hear each other's voices and say hello.
Good morning.
Good morning,
everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
I love your chalice, Amy.
Nice chalice, yes.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello, good morning.
Nice to be able to rename ourselves.
Good afternoon, Sally. All right. If you are interested in lots of the activities going on over the coming week and beyond, have a look at our order of service, which connects to our What's Happening page and gives you in detail the things happening this afternoon and all week. And that is also the order of service. You can click on the link anytime that's in your chat and see the whole order of service there to follow along. And now, let us begin our service. We light our chalice with the words of the Reverend Hope Johnson. Join me in lighting yours if you have one there. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together. We are active and proactive. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can. We are one, working, eating, laughing, playing, singing, storytelling, sharing, and rejoicing, getting to know each other, taking risks, opening up, questioning, seeking, searching, trying to understand, struggling, making mistakes, paying attention, asking questions, listening, living our answers, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, and being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. We are one. Our centering words each week come from one of the sources of our living tradition. This week, they come from US American writer, lecturer, and activist Helen Keller. If one thinks, one must reach conclusions. And conclusions are not always pleasant. They are a thorn in the spirit, but I consider it a priceless gift and a responsibility to think. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us feel ourselves arrive here fully in this sacred space we have created together. Now let us join as Bruce leads us in singing through the hard times. The words are here on your screen and in your order of service.
Sometimes our living gets so dark and lonesome, it seems like there's nothing we can do. So we reach out to each other and raise a song together and let our voices carry us through. are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come. We are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come. And when the war clouds gather, it's so easy to get angry, and just as hard not to be afraid. But you know in your own heart, no matter what happens, you just can't turn your back and walk away. We are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come. We are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come. So hand in hand together, we help each other carry the light of peace within us every day. If we can learn to live it, to walk and talk and give it, that world of peace won't be so far away. We are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come. We are singing through the hard times, singing through the hard times, working for the good times to come.
Let's take some time now to hold all that we've heard in this space, in our hearts, to feel our connections to people far away, to beings all over, through one another, and to be grateful for the ties that bind us so closely to the people we love here and the people and beings that they love far away. Blessed be. Let us now join in singing Faith of the Larger Liberty.
Costly light shall be our blessed possession.
As the battle rages in our newspapers, in the halls of our legislatures, about what history we should teach and how, it can turn into a debate between comedy and tragedy. Comedy is putting a smiley face on the story of the United States, the glorious progress of a great and good people whose only errors have been steadily corrected. Tragedy seeks to correct this cartoonish version by reminding students, and all of us, of the crimes and sins this nation has committed and sought to bury. This can put us in an awkward position if we wish to tell an honest history and really understand the past and ourselves. I mean, who wants to be just speaking tragedy? Who wants to be the skeleton at the feast all the time? And how enticing do we make self-understanding if it's only about the wrongs we have committed or suffered? And yet, here we are at another anniversary of another tragedy. 5 years ago last night, a gunman committed one of our deadliest acts of domestic terrorism at the Pulse, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. 49 people died and 53 more were wounded. Surely these stories have to be lifted up, have to be remembered, not only for the sake of the dead and those who love them, but for the sake of fully understanding the world in which we live and the world that we wish to create. And our stories are incomplete if we only tell the tragedies, just as much as if we only tell the smiley face sticker version of our shared lives, our history. As Utah Phillips, who wrote the first song we sang together today, would say when introducing a labor song, Joe Hill was executed by the state of Utah November 19th, 1915 for writing songs like this, but he left them to us. People's songs. These are people's songs. So you damn well ought to learn how to sing it. Don't you think? Joe Hill was a labor organizer with the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, which was a powerful union for a brief period of our history, especially here in the West. The only major union in the country to oppose entry into what would become known as the First World War, and the only one in which women, Asian Americans, African Americans, and immigrants were all welcome from its founding. Members of the union were and are known as the Wobblies, and as Phillips notes, they were also famous for their songs. Joe Hill, author of many of these songs, martyr of a likely put-up job, and singer. He was not either or, but both and. And we sing his songs and songs like Utah Phillips's, not to balance out the tragedy, much less to cover it up, but to embrace the whole of who he was, of what our history was and is, a mix of joy and woe, sorrow and triumph, hope and discouragement and anger and promise. So for the rest of today's sermon time, I want to tell some stories from moments of crisis and change that show us ourselves in that mirror. Yes, a mirror, not a poster or a billboard or a painting or a TV movie, but the whole picture, as close to the way it was as people can remember and relate. Here on the weekend, when we mourn the Pulse attack, for example, let's tell a story from Stonewall, the rebellion against police brutality that kicked off the modern LGBT rights movement. Stonewall and this particular story have been legendized, the way history often is. But this much seems to be true. As the cops tried to haul bar attendees away and book them for having the wrong gender identity or the wrong sexual orientation, a bunch of the attendees neither fled nor submitted, but formed a rocket-style kick line singing, "We are the village girls, we wear our hair in curls, we wear our dungarees above our Nelly knees." As this story has been reclaimed, sometimes they've been imagined as wearing evening wear drag, including high heels that the police couldn't approach without risking losing an eye. That part is probably not true. However, that embellishment is done in the same spirit as the real kick line itself, claiming struggle, a moment of real fear and worry, as something also loaded with humor and enthusiasm and music and fun. This is a side of struggle that is not always told. It's incompatible with our images of worried figures huddled around a kitchen table planning a campaign, or noble figures marching arm in arm, and still less of anybody suffering prison or beating. As a result, when we join the struggle, we might feel like we mustn't crack a smile. We might not want to join the campaign because it seems so grim. So here's another story. Well, not a story in this case because I can't find the exact words. But my view of the civil rights struggle, which is still going on, was forever changed when I read the recollections of a woman who worked closely in that time with Martin Luther King. The gist of what she said was, what people don't understand about working with Dr. King was that we had such a wonderful time. It was a joy, full of laughter and singing. Let's hear that story. Let's tell the stories like that as part of the story of change and all the hard work and suffering that it takes. Let's retell the story Ruth Okimoto tells of her father when they were in an internment camp, a prison for Japanese Americans during World War II. She was 6 years old when the family was imprisoned in Poston, Arizona. Most families planted gardens there in the camps to supplement the prison food. But Ms. Okamoto's father didn't just grow vegetables. He also built a fish pond and somehow got hold of koi, the traditional fish of Japanese gardens. In prison, in the middle of the desert, there was a koi pond. It turns out that he wasn't the only one by a long shot, that in fact, internees in Manzanar here in California and Minidoka in Idaho also built classical Japanese gardens with the knowledge and often the support of the officials who held them prisoner. Maybe these officials wanted to soften the harsh lives of the prisoners. Maybe they acted more from self-interest, wanting to be able to point to something that showed the outside world that the camps were really just like homes. And why did the internees themselves put so much labor into hauling boulders and digging ponds and planting trees when their lives there were already so hard? I find that lovely to contemplate. Let's imagine for a moment that we are transported inside those barbed wire fences into this place that stinks of loss and fear and the imposition of shame. And there we see the boulders and plants of a classical Japanese garden. We follow the path as it turns and we come to quiet water. We cross a bridge and we look out over barracks to wilderness, and then we look below our feet and there is a flash of gold. Koi, making their way in perfect tranquility. Another story we might tell is many stories intertwined and summarized as the birth of the blues. Out of hard labor and sorrow, drawing heavily on their religious music and influenced by African and Scottish and probably Native American and Arabic strains as well, Black laborers in the fields of the South create a new form of music. It's sung in the fields. It's played in jam sessions by the fireside at night. It's crooned to babies in their laps and lovers who have left. The blues becomes so emblematic of African American culture that when George Gershwin wants to create a lullaby for his opera Porgy and Bess, he uses the minor pentatonic scale that says the blues. Also reaching back to the spirituals from which the blues emerged to write Summertime, which Larry played to begin our service. And just as Summertime is said to be the most recorded song of all time, the blues in general shaped music in the United States and in the world. Jazz and rock and soul and R&B, hip hop and countless other shades of popular music and classical music, all shaped and shaded by the blues. Even if we don't know an iota of music theory, every one of us knows a blues progression as well as we know the national anthem, and we can sing it a lot more easily. All of this out of suffering and struggle that is not over, but gave rise to so much creativity and beauty. Speaking of music, let's cross the ocean for a moment to tell about a story I learned from people here at UUCPA, the singing revolution that brought independence to 3 former Soviet republics, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Shortly after the Soviet occupation of Estonia began, the country held its regular song festival. What could be a problem about that? People singing folk songs. From the Soviets' point of view, it would perfectly demonstrate to the world that life in Estonia was normal. It was unchanged. People were free and happy. But the people sneaked a new song past the censors, a song of celebration of their homeland that, to every Estonian, meant a dream of a time when they would once again be free to govern themselves. But it also had an innocent appearance. It was just a song, not a call to arms, but a hymn to their homeland. They, along with their neighboring states of Latvia and Lithuania, lived as satellite states for several decades, but in the late 1980s, the singing that had been building and sung in folk festivals, in cafes, in gatherings all over these countries became part of a strategic movement. In Estonia, first there were spontaneous music-based demonstrations, but then in 1987, they gathered in huge numbers, at least 300,000 of them in the capital of Tallinn, to sing forbidden national hymns. Songs like this spread, as songs do. Latvia and Lithuania also joined in, remembering their national identities through their music. The movements used the contagiousness of music and the joy of singing together while also building a form of political power that is called soft, but that can be as hard to overcome as a mountain of feather pillows. These songs became the lifeline to a freer time from the past and into the dreamed of future. People sang them everywhere. Sometimes the conflict was obvious. as when the Red Army marching band tried to drown out the songs, but 100,000 voices rose above the Army's drums and trumpets. Sometimes the conflict was more subtle. The fact was, as long as the revolution remained nonviolent, it would be very hard for the Soviet Union to justify an invasion with tanks and troops. And while people were singing, they remained nonviolent. Within 4 years, all 3 countries declared their independence and gained it without significant bloodshed. The singing revolution. And one last story from here at home, where a year of loss and isolation gave rise to so much creativity. We see it today in the teamwork of the worship tech. We've seen new methods from our religious educators, like the committee and the teachers, new methods to create community and learning for children, new methods as well for adults who gather to learn and connect. The video stories for all ages that Dan makes and the beautiful video accompaniments to hymns and anthems that Bruce creates. Today, all that creativity was symbolized by something that's happening at UUCPA right now, the second Stuffy Sleepover. You saw the photos earlier. Stuffy's on the loose and giving us so much joy in a space where we people, with our nasty germs and our ability to get sick from one another, haven't been able to congregate, though we will soon. This is history. This is our story, the human story, one of tragedy and comedy and much more. If we seek out our whole stories, if we ask people to tell them and we listen, we receive not only laughter and music along with tears, but a sense of power and unity, purpose and passion. This is how we transform the world into something approaching our vision of peace, justice, and equality for us all. Thank you, everyone. Let's join in singing as Bruce leads us in We Are a Gentle, Angry People.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many singing for our lives. We are gay and straight together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
As flame is to spirit, so spirit is to breath, and breath to song. Though we extinguish the flame in our sanctuary, may we tend it in our hearts until we meet again. Please stay for coffee hour after our benediction. And you'll be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room with me to discuss the service. Maybe you have some stories to share from the history of struggle. You should be able to move between breakout rooms on your own. Kind of depends on your Zoom version, I believe. The rooms will stay open for about half an hour. So now please unmute yourself and turn on your video. I'll give you several seconds to do that before I begin. And touch hands virtually like this while we say our benediction together.
There, okay.
Go out
Walk
into
in
the
the
world
World peace.
of good
Courage.
hold fast
That is good.
No one
one
Evil for evil. Faint-hearted.
the weak,
Suffering. Grace and beauty. Love with word and deed. Honor all beings.
Amen.
Amen.
Blessed be.
Amen.
Amen.